Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Cusick. I'm the TrainingPeaks WKO4 product leader. I'm here tonight to introduce Karen Mackin. Karen and I have known each other for a while. She is an amazing triathlon coach, and she's giving her first webinar. She is a WKO4 ninja. That being said, it's her first webinar, so I'm going to follow along and listen and just make sure her system is working. So Karen, one thing yet, we can't see your screen. So if you can, in the control panel, click show my screen, and I'll be able to tell you.
Okay, can you see it?
Yeah, and now you just need to swap your screen, display screen, so we can see your main screen.
Okay. Display settings, swap presenter, and okay.
And you have got it, perfect. So I'm going to go to mute and let you take over. I'm available for any questions. I have already gotten notice that people can hear us fine. So, and I know we can see you because I'm looking at your screen. So you're good to go.
Wait, quick question. I'm seeing on my the questions, the presenters stuff on the screen that is everybody else is seeing.
You could drag it over to the other screen.
Good. That's what I'll do.
Switch the screen.
It's not draggable. That's weird.
Can you reduce it?
You know what? I'll just leave it there. If nobody else can see it, it's
no
okay.
one else can see it. We see your normal screen. That's
okay.
That's super secret stuff you're not supposed to tell everybody about.
Oh yeah. Oh well. Look, this is interesting. The questions did go over, which is okay.
Everything should drag over. You drag it by the very top. But I'm going to shut off and let you jump in. We can see your screen perfectly.
All right. I'm just kind of getting things squared away here.
No worries.
All right.
You're on.
Okay. Hi there, everyone. Again, this is my first webinar, so hopefully it'll go really well, and you guys will have some fun, and we'll see what happens. I'm going to go slide 2. Oh, yeah, before we get started, this is the everyone's on mute questions. I'll try to get them, although I don't know how good I'm going to be about dual processing. We'll see, but hopefully I'll be able to answer them as we go. And so what I wanted to basically go through here is I plan on going through a basic workflow for a triathlon coach using WKO4. I'm making an assumption here that I might have some WKO4 newbies on the webinar, and I'm going to guess that there are probably some experts watching too. If there are experts out there, a lot of this stuff will be pretty much known information. But for those experts, I do hope that, and those who are new to this or whatever, I hope everyone might still be able to come out of the webinar with at least one chart or tip that they can use with their athlete. So the basic flow is setting up a new athlete. I'm going to talk a little bit about some athlete level charts. I might save some of those. I think I did move those a little bit later under the reviewing section for the athlete level, but these charts some of them can be very interchangeable because once you've set it up, you're going to want to use it to review as well. Then I'm going to move through planning both at kind of a seasonal level and some of the things you can do with WKO4, and also on the workout level, planning for maybe some interval workouts, different things like that. And finally, just kind of wrapping it up with athlete view and our athlete level examples and workout level examples. I'm actually going to choose swim examples because there's not a whole lot out there, and I thought I might as well whip up some swim charts and see if I can make something really interesting to show, because there's a ton of information out there for cycling and decent amount for running. More to come with, I think Steve Palladino is going to be doing a power run webinar coming up soon, so that should be great as well. So I thought swim might be a good place to start. All right. So let's jump right in and go setting up a new athlete. So I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty rare for me to get an athlete who actually unless they've used WKO4 in the past, maintains a timeline of what their historic functional threshold power, running pace thresholds over time. And you know, if you're looking at historic information and you want to glean some information from the history, it's really, really important to have, you know, a timeline and appropriate thresholds for that timeline. Because if you're going to look at any TSS data, weekly TSS, or even the performance manager chart, some ramp rates or anything like that, you want to make sure that those TSS values are legitimate and reasonable and reliable, because you don't want to be making decisions on not very reliable data. So my philosophy on looking, we're going to get a little bit into this with, I'm going to open up WKO4. But my philosophy here is, let's, you know, in order to determine some of these thresholds, let's use as many multiple inputs and make a call on that as we can. So I'm going to, oh, this is interesting. I have to move this over here because it wasn't over here. And okay. Can everybody see? I put WKO4
We
on.
can see your WKO4.
Okay, because it was on my other screen. Great, thank you. Okay, so where was I? All right, so let's start with functional threshold power. I gotta move this presenter's view. It's in the way now. Okay. And I'm having a little technical difficulty. I thought I would be able to do this presenter, move it, but put it over here. Okay, sorry about that. All right, getting back to where I was. Okay, so let's talk about looking at some historical data and trying to figure out what, let's start with cycling, because that's actually probably the easiest one, because we have this wonderful modeled functional threshold power tracking tool, or, you know, just chart that shows the threshold over time. I've highlighted my athletes' last bunch of data, goes way back, but you can basically go through here and kind of make a call on, from here to here we want to set the FTP this, and from here to here we want to set the FTP at this, from here to here we want to set, and, you know, go through and set it that way. That's a pretty straightforward, easy way to set it. One thing you want to make sure, though, is that this model is based off of the performance, or the PD curve, and you want to make sure that, you know, oh, so ask your athlete, did you do some hard efforts? Did you do some group rides where you might have gotten some harder efforts at various time frames or whatever? And if not, then you might, you know, ask them what they thought their FTP might have been, or look for other ways to kind of determine it, open up some workouts and different things like that. But so that's kind of the easiest thing to do, is with the modeled functional threshold power. And now there's running power, but this athlete, who is Joe Triathlete, renamed Joe, he now has a running power meter. So I do have a run power PD curve and run power MFTP tracking, but he did not in the past. So I'm kind of left with, okay, what am I going to do? So what I'll do is I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to look at some other various peak information, peak 20-minute pace, peak 30-minute pace. I even have here 3-minute, 9-minute if they had some good hard efforts there, and do a little critical pace calculation. So you can look at that. You also might want to look at their best mile, 5K, 10K, 15K, some charts there as well. So that will give you an idea of pace. Now, one of the other things that's kind of cool, I'm going to type in. Now, you got to remember that that's just a static point in time. So that's, you know, whatever, that was the best out of his whole Ironman thing. But what you want to do is you want to break out some of these ranges, or you want to set up some ranges so that you can go, okay, well, let's look at Q1 of last year. Now I'm using Q just because, you know, let's say January through March. let's look at it there. And if you want, you can break it up into January, February, March, depending on how much granularity you want to get into or how much time you want to spend doing this. But you'll click here, then you'll look at this information, you'll kind of make a call. Okay, well, I think this was what his FTP was, and then you can go through Q2, Q3, and all the way up to Q4. I've got this last one, Q4 last year and today. So you can look at that. Now, that gives you some information that can really help you make a decent call for various time ranges on what his threshold pace for running was. So next we got to move into swim, because we got to do this for all three sports. I know that there are a lot of coaches who use 1,000 meter or yard. This chart happens to report yards. And because all of my athletes actually swim in yard pools, so all of my charts are that. And then also it will calculate up. I'm curious if you can see my pointer on the screen, my mouse. I don't know if anybody can.
We can see your pointer. Yep. As
yeah?
you use it, we can follow. Absolutely. We
okay,
see
great.
everything that's on your screen except
okay,
for the
great. Okay, thanks. All right, so then, there's the top 1,000 pace. I know some coaches actually use a 30-minute pace, and some people like to do a 200-yard, 400-yard critical swim speed, and I've got a little critical swim speed calculation. And again, you're going to have to go through the different ranges to get an idea of that, and sometimes they might match up, sometimes they're not going to match up, and you're just going to have to make the best call based on the information you get. But again, having more than one piece of information is going to be useful. So a couple of other things I wanted to touch base on is, if you'll notice that now, as I rolled up here, I have Q4, Q1 of this year. Was it Q4 of last year? Okay, so I wanted to demonstrate this chart, which is he actually has power now, but I'm not really sure what. Okay, there we go. He has power now, so in this time I can actually say, oh, look at his model functional threshold power, and I also know that he's been doing some hard work, so the model is probably pretty darn good. So this is his run power threshold, 273 over here, and then I'm like, oh, gee, I wonder what I can look at all this data over here, but I can also go over here. This is where I overlaid mean max power for running over mean minimal normalized graded pace and mean minimal pace. And if I hover over 273-ish, 272, that's close enough, we get an 807, and I believe that's 757 or something. You can't see it, but I know I did this before, so it's about 757. And then I can look at that and compare that to what this is, 801, 754. So we're looking at, we have pretty much dialed into what I think, at least for this this time frame, his threshold might be. So that's just kind of one, just some charts. This is a dashboard chart that I put together, triathlon threshold review. It's just a bunch of charts. You need to have all three of these selected, swim, bike, and run, for it to work. And obviously, if you want run power, you're going to have a running power meter to get that as well. So a couple of things that I did want to make a note on is there's also, heart rate threshold. And there's just a quick word on heart rate threshold. I know that a lot of athletes have different heart rate thresholds for run and bike. WKO4 has only one heart rate threshold. So what you're going to want to do, if you want to make sure that, if your athlete does use heart rate and they are significantly different between run and bike, you're probably going to want to either, have your athlete calculated in, the heart rate threshold in TrainingPeaks, but then manually enter it in TrainingPeaks so that it syncs. The manual entry will sync to WKO4, but the non-manual will actually, it'll calculate the heart rate based on whatever the heart rate is in set, which is probably your bike heart rate, I'm going to guess. But anyway, so that's just kind of a heads up kind of thing to be aware of for heart rate thresholds. All right, so we've got some thresholds set. A couple of other things we're doing kind of right now, we're just reviewing a history, looking back at the athlete. We're going to go and we're going to look at some other things that I like to kind of get a feel for what the athlete's done in the past. One is, okay, so, you know, how is his swim, bike, run balance? You know, is this guy a runner who spends most of his time running and he does a little cycling on the side? And, you know, you might need to adjust that. Does it reflect their strengths and weaknesses? In other words, you know, not spending all the time doing their sport strength and less time doing their weakness. You probably want to adjust that accordingly. And it might also be adjusted for various times of the season, but just to kind of get a good idea with what they're doing in the past, and maybe even, you know, once they start following your plan, you're going to be all set, right? Anyway, does it reflect the event? You know, if you're doing a triathlon, generally, you know, you want to be doing at least 50% of your workouts, your time in TSS in cycling, you know, less time swimming and little less time running. So this is just a quick review. If you do need to make some modifications to what they've done in the past, they really like to run, you can kind of show this and explain the difference, and it kind of sets a nice expectation for that change. Okay, moving on to, this is chronic training load. Everybody's very familiar with the chronic training load. I've got a couple of charts that essentially calculate out, wow, well, what did they do for maximum chronic training load for all of their sports, for swim and for bike and for run. I've broken it out. I also have a chronic intensity load, so that you have a good idea of what their history is. And also knowing what their current chronic training load is obviously a great place to start for a weekly TSS. You know, multiply that by 7 and you know that's a load that they can handle, because that's what they've been doing. A quick note for running TSS values, if you do have an athlete who does have power, and I think Steve will go over this probably in more detail, but the default, I mean, I just want to say that the default TSS calculation in WKO4 for running is based on normalized graded pace. So if you're planning on using power for run, these numbers might be slightly different in TrainingPeaks and WKO4. So that's just kind of a heads up, just so that you know. All right. All right, so another thing that's really good to know is to understand what kind of a ramp rate the athlete is able to handle. And again, this might be very different for the different sports. Is one of the reasons this is a kind of a chart. I'm pretty sure it's one of the basic default charts, but I just broke it out into all swim, bike, and run. This is what the athlete did in the past. I put a different number for the dotted line because 5 TSS, so that you can kind of see where these are, because 7 was way up here and didn't really show that well. A couple other things that I really love to look at is the lowest training stress balance. So this one can be really fun to look at if they did a training camp, and you can also get a really good idea of what they can handle. So oh, look at that, 3 times he did -40, he did -40 to -450. If I threw that at him, he'd be able to handle that for all of the 3 sports. And for running, you know, this is what he's done, and this is what he's done for bikes. So
hey, Karen.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? You just have a question that someone, and I kind of missed it myself, so I figured I'd ask it. Can you repeat the statement about multiplying by 7?
Can we what?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah.
By 7?
So how come I didn't see that question? Oh, wait, I am seeing, okay, now I'm seeing questions. All right.
It's your first webinar, and I do them all the time, so I'm used to looking at it.
Ironman Mont Tremblant. Yes, it's Ironman Mont Tremblant. Okay, multiplying by 7. All right, so basically, all right, so chronic training load is a TSS per day. And that's what they've, you know, that's something that they can pretty much handle. They've done that for the last 42 days. So if you multiply that by 7, then that would be 7 days, and that would be a pretty decent, you know, it's just kind of a ballparky good place to start. So I hope that made sense.
You know, Karen, it makes sense to me, and I think it's a great point. I don't think you have a lot of guidance out there about how much TSS you can schedule. I think that's a very good way to look at it. I'll steal that from you because I haven't heard that before. But
No
I think
problem.
So but thanks for answering.
Yeah, actually, it's really important by sport specifically, especially for running, because you can hammer pretty hard on cycling and handle a lot more load or quicker ramping for cycling than you can for running. So it's a really great way to, and that's why I like to have these ramp rates broken out and know what the chronic training load is for running specifically. Okay, so some other things that you might want to look at, and I'm not going to show you the charts for these just yet because I'm going to show you the charts for these later on in the when I get into the review, is basically weekly duration, distances, TSS, weekly TSS, intensity factors, what they can handle for like a weekly intensity factor. But I'll go over that as far as charts in the review section. So you'll get to see some of those when I pull up WKO4. All right, so moving on to the next slide. All right, so planning, I don't know, you might be able to, I'm going to close my door because my bird is chirping and it might be annoying. Hang on one second. Okay. All righty, all right, so now we're getting into, we kind of did some review. We've got a lot of historic information and we're ready to kind of get into the planning mode. We want to look at the event and know what the demands are. Obviously, you're going to be training for an Ironman a little bit differently than you'll be training for a sprint triathlon. You want to look at the athlete's strength and limiters. I really like to talk to an athlete and get an idea of what, where they think their strengths and limiters are, but you also have a lot of great charts and things that you can look at, PD curves. There's that subjective input within sport and relative to each sport. So in other words, are they a great swimmer relative to other people? So one of the things I used to do, what I like to do, is if they have some race results, try to find out what percentage of their, if they were in the top 10% for the swim and the top 50% for bike and maybe the top 30% for running of all of the runners or all of the triathletes in the race, you kind of can really get a good idea of where their strengths are relative to from one sport to the next. Most athletes have a pretty good idea, but that's one of the things I like to kind of look at, and it might put some things in perspective that way. All right, so I'm going to talk about season planning using TSS, and I am so glad that last week, I think it was last week or over Sunday or something like that, TrainingPeaks popped up with this awesome article on training for an Ironman using TSS, and I just put the link there because it's awesome, great way to go through it, and then I don't have to do it in this presentation. I also want to give Alan Couzens credit for this really great ballpark range of hours and weekly TSS, target CTLs. This is a really great place to start if you have no idea, am I doing what am I training the amount that I should be training, am I doing enough TSS, and is my chronic training load high enough, that sort of thing. So that's a really great place to start. So that said, let's go ahead and enter some weekly TSS. You've got this thing out, you've figured out what you need to do, you enter in some weekly TSS data and duration, and then go through and do some checking. So what you're going to do is, so one of the things that I do is essentially I'll go into my athlete and TrainingPeaks and I'll put one workout that has at the end of the week, which is Sunday, and it has the weekly duration and the weekly TSS. and then I'll sync my training, you know, my WKO4, and then the data comes in here. It also is good to have it there so that I can kind of see, oh, that's what it is. Now, some people you can use the ATP feature in TrainingPeaks as well, but if you want it to be synced to WKO4, just putting in a workout at the end of the week with the volume, you know, the duration and the TSS, and then you can go in and check. Let's see, how do those ramp rates look? All right, so that brings me to the next chart. So we're going to bring up that ramp rates chart. We're going to look at, oh, let's see, I've got my plan stuff in here, and this is what it's doing. I didn't enter all the stuff out further on, but you could enter all the way out, and you can see where that's going to be. You can look at the performance manager chart and see what the chronic training load's going to be. You can go through and just, you know, basically see how it's all going to pan out. So that's essentially the kind of the season planning in a nutshell. I definitely recommend, if you want to do more with TSS, go to that link and read a little bit more about that. But essentially, if you do get that data into WKO4, you can really just use it to look, you know, does it make sense? Is this within the confines of how I want to progress? All right. All right. So here's another couple of charts I like to look at. Sometimes I might not actually want to increase the chronic training load because I want to focus a little bit on intensity. So in that case, overlaying the chronic intensity load with the chronic training load broken out by sport. Oh, wait a second. Okay. So now we're going to move, that's kind of the season planning. Now we're going to move right into the writing workouts. Optimized intervals, love it. And the mean max, mean min. Here is where I am going to, hang on one second. Okay, this is where I'm going to actually bring up my WKO4. And I'm going to go to, let's see, where am I going to go? Oh yeah, I'm going to go all the way over here. This is another dashboard chart that I like to look at. This is kind of planning workouts. Just a kind of key code here is sometimes I like to use the right-hand explorer to select the sport. And when I do that, I will put the parentheses RHE in parentheses so that I know, okay, the power on this is actually both. It's just power. It's not run power. It's not bike power. So basically the highest is the highest of the bike, and you know, maybe it's higher for running, whatever it is. Whichever the highest is, it's going to take that. So what I'll need to do is let's take a peek. Let's say we're going to do some cycling stuff, and I'll just do that. And you know, obviously you have a pretty good idea of what kinds of intervals you might want to prescribe for your athlete, but what wattage do you want to do for that? You can use the optimized interval chart, and I love this because it basically gives you, I think Tim did a whole webinar on this, and if you haven't seen it, I think you should totally go and see it because it's great. Gives you some duration guidelines, some target watts. But if you have specific wattages that you want to do, you might want to look at, I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can all see it. I should probably put the last 90 days here too. Last 90 days. Last 90 days. Okay. Oh, I just realized I should be checking my yes for weekly training load to start. Makes sense. Is there a way to, I'm reading the question. When you set up a new athlete, is there a way to seed CTL, ATL? I'm not really sure what the question is. I don't know, maybe you can clarify that a little bit. I don't know what you mean by seed. Sorry about that. Okay, so again, here's just PD curve. The mean maximal power curve is the yellow dotted line, and I actually added a little dotted line here for 95% because I think that's a pretty good estimate. I think that's what they use in the optimized interval, 95% of the mean maximal. But we can do this across multiple durations. I want to give him 10-minute durations, and I can see that his mean maximal power is 245, but a good target might be 235 plus or minus something. So this is another way that I like to do that. And I can do that for bike and run because this athlete has power. However, if they don't have power, we need to look at some other stuff, right? So typical things that you want to look at is mean minimal pace. What have they done for this duration? Actually, this is kind of a useful thing for sets. So if you wanted to put together a set of maybe 20 minutes or something like that, you might want to go over here and say, okay, 20 minutes, and then figure out what your set's going to be from there. These shorter durations, you're probably going to look at the swim pace. Okay, well, what's their best 100? What's their best 200? What's their best 400? What's their best 1,000? This might be, I'll give repeats of a little bit less than that time, depending on how much recovery you want to use. But this kind of gives you at least a starting point for some intensities that they might be able to handle. And again, for running, same thing. We've got 1K, 1 mile pace, 5K, 10K there as well. So that's useful. Now, I actually, I thought about this and I just added this one in here because I was like, well, geez, mean minimal pace curve, maybe if I subtract 5% from the pace, make the pace, 5% slower, whatever that is there, maybe that might be a good target. I have not validated that at all, but I don't know if anybody wants to try that. I've been using power, so I thought that it's a concept, question mark, look into it. Okay, so here's the dummy workout at this, I'm reading a question. Yes, with a dummy workout at the start of the period, the dummy workout shows the beginning point of TSS. That's actually a really good point. Okay, so when you set up a new athlete you put in a dummy workout that is at the start of the period. I don't know if the dummy workout, it depends on what you're going to be doing for the beginning point of the TSS, because chronic training load would be the last 48, 42 days. It might work, actually. So it's an idea. I haven't really done that, but that's an interesting thing to try. Okay, so there we have it, planning, writing workouts. I like Dean Golick. I'm not sure the last name, I can't pronounce it, whatever. He did a interval webinar, which was fantastic. If you haven't seen that, totally watch it. It's an awesome webinar. All right, so moving on to planning. Oh, that's what that is. Okay. All right. Here is where we're going to get into some athlete level review. So I'm going to bring up, this is basically some progress reviews. Checking those charts that I showed you earlier, the model functional threshold power, performance manager chart, look at their CTLs and all that we looked at when we're viewing the history. In addition, you probably looked at weekly distances, durations, compliance. Stamina and TTE are really important for triathletes. So those are great charts as well. Those are also default charts in WKO4. Peak powers and paces. So I am going to go into WKO4 again. And this time I've got the last 90 days. And I'm just going to go back and show you some of the weekly reviews charts. These are pretty basic. They're just kind of broken out by, this was the CTL dashboard where I had, actually that's going to take a long time to load, which is why I took the picture instead. Oh wait, actually that's only the last 90 days, so maybe not. Anyway, we had the picture of the CTL dashboard. Ramp rates. Okay, so this is where I really wanted to be. We're going to look at weekly summaries for, oh, my computer has frozen. Okay, my computer's frozen. I can't move my mouse.
Yeah,
Okay.
Karen, that's what I warned you. Sometimes using WKO4 because it in GoToWebinar, if you don't have a strong video,
Okay.
it can get in a little trouble.
All right, well, it's back again, so I was a little bit panicked there, but there we have it. Okay, so looking at distance, this is just one of my quickly review again. And this, you could use this for a history review. You could use it for just weekly tracking kind of thing. I like to know what their longest workout of the week is. And this basically is both their distance and their longest workout. This little line here, this is something I picked up from Steve Palladino. He has this training load based on distance. I thought that was an interesting little thing to add on there for running. And I think I have one for, I didn't put one on the bike one, not sure why, but probably because TSS is going to be more valuable for that. But that's distance charts. Here's a duration, and this is basically the same thing, longest workout by duration. And also, this is all sports with the individuals here, but this is my favorite chart here. This is the longest workout, and I have to give credit here to William Renfro, who helped me. You might have seen me posting up about this. I wanted to find out what the longest workout was if an athlete did a brick, because sometimes, you know, they might do a brick, but you don't know what their longest workout really was. And here I basically had if they did one workout within this default, but it's in there and the expression is 10 minutes, but you can change it to 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever you want, or maybe you want to do it 15 minutes if it's in the middle of winter and they have to change the clothes or whatever. So it actually, and here's cool because you can say, oh, well, their longest workout here was obviously a brick or, you know, multi-sport thing because the longest is longer than here, but over here the longest workout was a bike. So one of the things when I did a historical review of his Ironman last season, I noticed that every single one of his long workouts was all bike. There was not a little run afterwards or anything like that. So that's kind of a nice thing to be able to see there. Okay, so we got the longest and we have weekly TSS. This is planned and actual by sport and total. Probably should put total over there. Let's move along. These are just kind of quick weekly compliance chart. This is a compliance chart. That's a default chart that comes with WKO4. I just broke it into swim, bike, run, and all, so you can see how well your athlete's following up on your plan. And finally, this is all important, is are they actually improving? Are they getting faster? So here's the peaks for the bike is on power. I've got run power here. I also have mean minimal pace and kind of tracking that as well. I put dotted lines on a specific duration that he's been doing some specific intervals on that I really wanted to track. So I wanted to see the trend. And that's what that is. And then this is also, you can see some improvement here at the swim as well. So that's it for that for Joe Triathlete. So now I'm going to move into a more sports specific example, and I'm going to use Jane Triathlete. And we are going to bring up we're going to look first at an athlete level Mackin freestyle swimming dashboard. This was something that I wanted to build for a really long time, and it took me putting this presentation together to make it happen. This athlete has been working on stroke improvement. Basically, she had a few things with her stroke that we needed to work on, and I want to see that in the data. I want to see some improvement here in the data. So let's go to last 90 days. Okay, there's last 42 days. This is not exactly what, oh, it's actually the last 30 days because that was when we started the work. So what this chart shows is it shows, actually, you know what, I'm gonna make this bigger so you can all see it and you can see all of the different things here. So it shows that for each of the dates that she swam, it shows the average freestyle. I actually pulled out just freestyle, her average freestyle pace of the workout. It also shows her stroke count at all paces, and her, this is freestyle, just freestyle only. Stroke count at all paces and the average freestyle stroke count at race pace. So she actually did a master's swim 1650 meter. She's doing another 1500 meter swim in March, and I wanted to see, okay, so basically you get faster swimming, or stroke improvement can be shown if you're swimming faster with the same number of strokes, or you're going at the same speed with less strokes per length. So what I wanted to see here was, well, what is her stroke at the pace that her race pace? So I isolated her race pace, and then I did a little trend on the average freestyle stroke count. And so we see a nice little decrease here in her freestyle stroke count. So I was kind of happy about that. So next thing I'm going to do is we're going to move right into the athlete level swim. Oh, some of the other things on the dashboard that I wanted to show you. Again, we have the top 10 here. We've got the mean minimal. You've seen those. These are top 10 paces for various strokes. You've seen this before already. It's got some basic information. But again, here's some freestyle average pace by stroke count. So we can kind of see what that is. This is the strokes and lengths chart. And this is her average stroke count by different paces. So this is 90 seconds. This is a pretty wide range of pace, but I just kind of threw it up there to kind of illustrate the point of that. So couple of things that that's important to know in creating charts at the athlete level and actually even at the workout level for swimming. If you want to isolate freestyle, if you want to get stroke count or stroke type, or any of the information that is actually per length, it's really important that you don't use duration or elapsed duration. You need to use delta time and delta distance to compute, to get all that stuff. Yeah. Okay. So, the other thing that was really interesting that I learned was, and I'm going to open up. I'm going to show you the workout level on some of my data. So let's actually go back here, viewing athlete levels, workout level. Okay, so I did say that all of my, okay, so one of the challenges with swimming is that sometimes you get bad data, just as you do in cycling, but there's not a great, until recently, I didn't think there was a really great place to clean swim data. You can't really do it in WKO4 because the censored data won't, like, you can't eliminate a length, which is something I discovered. So it doesn't, you really can't do that. But I did find this excellent tool, and I'd highly recommend if you want to look at some of your swim data. I have pretty good swim data, depending on how I swim, mostly by myself. I'm not in a group. If you're doing a master's and you've got crowded lanes, sometimes you get you'll get a length that has double time where they didn't calculate it, or you might get 2 half time lengths where it's like you have an extra length, or you might have missed a length. And this tool is great for just cleaning that up on occasion when you get it. So let's go and look at some of this stuff because I think it's pretty cool. All right, so opening up, this is I'm going to start out with, let's see if this is the right, yeah, this is October 2. This is the one I wanted to look at. So I actually decided that the best way for me to look at this is to use bars. One of the reasons is one, you can pretty clearly see where the information is, where you might have some bad data, because it jumps out at you because you've got this long bar and then or two short bars or one long bar. The other reason I like the bars, I put dots for the rests so that it's clear where there's actually a rest and you can see each and every length. So I just wanted to show you here, I've got 6x100s that I did on a particular interval. I created ranges around all 6 of those. I've got 4 sets, and I have a swim interval report here that kind of will give me the duration, the distance, the average pace, the average stroke count, some SWOLF, this kind of thing, or whatever. What I actually like here is this is my Mackin Swim Zoom chart. I'm going to move this up just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to I think I'm going to show that on another, oops, where did it go? Sorry about that. I'm going to bring up another workout that I think is going to be a better one to illustrate the next one. It is on September 27th. Here we go. All right, so here's the other reason I like the bars as well. I did some IMs, and I'm going to actually call up the IM set because I did create a range around that. I've got it highlighted here. It includes the rest time in there. And I can get, okay, here we go, it's coming in. All right, here's the Zoom, the Mackin Zoom for this particular set. I color-coded the different strokes, and I'm gonna do this here too, because you can see everything better this way. You can see that I've actually got a trend for the entire set, and you can see that I'm actually getting slower throughout the whole set, but my freestyle only trend is actually getting less. So for my freestyle strokes, I happen to be going faster. My other strokes obviously were causing me to go slower. So that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. All right, so here's a couple of other charts that I think are, again, I broke these out by, actually, let's look at the entire workout for this. Not the IM set. We'll go to the entire. Okay, so I have a couple of bin charts. This tells me at stroke count of 9 per length. This is my average pace. This is my average pace for the stroke count at 10, 11, 12, and you can kind of see how that changes. I also broke it down by, okay, here's a range of paces from 90 seconds to 100 seconds per stroke, and gives me the average stroke count for that. Again, this is just freestyle information. All right, let's see. What time, how am I doing on time? You have great charts. Could you please share with us? That was the last comment. Of course, I'm going to share these charts. So let's see. I've got any other? Oh wow. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions, but I can go into, I have one other thing that I wanted to show for run, just a quick ditty on running. And one second. Okay, I just want to go to WKO4, and we're going to bring up, not me anymore, we're going to go back to Joe. And we're going to actually look at his run on January 19th. All right. I think I might have already selected it. Let's see. I have to move this. These are all planned workouts. Run January 19th is selected. Great. Okay. So I'm just going to not select that because I want to look at the entire workout. Actually, while I have all of these selected, let's go into the running pack, and then I'll go back to the other one. So I just kind of, Joe was doing some intervals, some 6-minute intervals, and I just like to highlight those intervals. And then, you know, let's get some basic information. This is the quick and dirty. What were the paces? What were the watts? What was the average normalized graded pace? What was the regular pace? What was the average power? We can get a lot more information with the interval the interval review report. This is the chart that I think, well, I got to go back to the entire workout. This is one of my favorite charts. And again, this is especially useful when you're looking at really long workouts and you want to see, you know, if a lot of you might know about pace over heart rate. That's where the first half of your workout is compared to the second half of your workout, and it kind of is a measure of cardiac drift. Well, this is a little bit more, I think this is better because it looks at the entire workout and looks at the entire workout's trend. So you can see what the change in the power was from the beginning to the end. You can see the percent change in the power. You can also see the change in the power over heart rate, and then the percent change of that as well. Again, this would be really useful to look at for like the longer workouts and such. So, all right, that's it for my example reviews. I have one other chart, just kind of say other random cool things that you can do with WKO4. And this is probably what I spend a lot of my time doing is if I have a question and I just need an answer, I can just create something to answer that question. For example, one of my athletes, he was thinking about his last cycle. He did a cyclocross race, and he actually does race cyclocross. I coach I do coach other athletes other than triathletes, but could have been a runner, and him looking at heart rate or whatever, and he thought, you know, I think my average heart rate was a lot higher in that, you know, that race than it has been for my other races. So I just like, oh well, let's take a look at that, and I selected out workouts that were around the same average power that he had did. So it was within a very tight range of powers. And I gave him a report that basically said, here's your average heart rate for this workout, this race, this race, this race. And, you know, this is exactly, you know, yeah, your heart rate was about the same. It's in the range. It wasn't any more than it was or not, but it's good to know the answers to those questions. And that's really what I love about WKO4. You can answer all sorts of any questions. You can create charts and dashboards that are tailored to your specific athletes. I've got an athlete who tends to run too fast all the time. So I have this dashboard that basically looks at, okay, let's see what percentage of your workouts are this, and, you know, within this particular pace. Anyway, so this is where I dial into triathletes, try race pace, look at stroke count, heart rate, and trends. And I said heart rate at this pace, and then I was thinking, wait, this is swimming. We don't have heart rate yet, right, Tim? This is where I'm like hoping that someday we're going to see heart rate on swimming. But anyway, that is it for me. I've got questions and answers is next. Let's see if anybody is still around for questions and answers.
Well, Karen, great job. Thank you so much for doing that and showing your charts. If you send your charts to Debbie, if you don't mind, make sure you put you as the author in the description in there. We'd be glad to load them to the library for everybody to grab tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get them.
Yep, I intended on doing that.
Make sure you list you as the author so that I can erase that and put me later. No, that was great, and what a great presentation. I know it's always hard doing a webinar, particularly your first one, because it is a little more challenging than people might think. So I really appreciate you putting in the time and energy to show all that.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
No, it looks like you've gotten all the questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, thank you so much. I owe you dinner next time I see you, and I think this was great. We will load the charts for everybody probably within 24 hours.
All right.
Thanks, all right. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Good night now.
Bye-bye.